The PC port of Stellar Blade is almost here, guys. Another 10 days or so until the final release. But until then, there's a demo available right now that we can look at on the RTX 5060 and RTX 4090. I really like this game. I bought it for the PlayStation 5 back when it came out, and it was great fun. My biggest gripe was that the performance mode looked a bit soft and flickery, a downside that a good PC port can fix, by the way, and it does. It's why after 17 hours of playtime, I chose to shelf my playthrough on the console for a full playthrough on the PC. The footage you're looking at is where I'm at on the console. We'll begin on the RTX 5060 at 1440p native TAA, very high graphical preset. The 5060 is more of a 1080p card, especially with its 8GB VRAM buffer, but it could handle 1080p no problem, and I felt that 1440p would be more exciting to check out, and the card should be technically very capable to do it. The first map where you land is pretty much an interactive cutscene, so we're going to stress things out on the next map. We just finished the tutorial map, and now we're on the first zone of the game, and the 5060 has been actually holding up pretty well at 1440p native TAA, doing better than I thought it would. That's why I wanted to look at 1440p, because 1080p was pretty much a breeze, so no concern there. And the performance in the game is actually pretty good overall, because being an Unreal Engine 4 game, I had my concerns. Now, one thing I noticed, because I also looked at my 9070 XT, maybe I'll make a video about it, I'm not sure, or maybe I'll wait for the final release, but it looks like AMD GPUs, at least the 9070 XT, was definitely underperforming when compared to my Nvidia GPUs that I've been looking at. So that's interesting. But I might make a video on that later when the game comes out anyway. But as far as the 5060 goes, as you can see at 1440p, it's doing pretty well. We'll go ahead and enable some DLSS. We have DLSS 4 in the game, which DLSS quality should look better than 1440p with TAA. And it does. Now, one thing I did notice though is that the performance gain wasn't as high as I thought it would be. You'll see with the 4090 that when you enable DLSS, same thing happened on the 9070 XT, by the way, is that the performance goes way up. But here we went from like 70 to 80 to around 120. I guess it's not so bad. The frame time graph does look a little bit jittery, I must say, and the 1% lows, they're not terrible, they're okay, but if it wasn't for the metrics on the screen, I wouldn't really be able to tell, because the game actually feels pretty fluid to play. And since I also tried the PlayStation 5 just to grab some footage to show you guys, it definitely feels a lot better than the PlayStation 5. And even more importantly, there's no flicker with DLSS. It looks very smooth. I've not been playing with DLSS quality for quite a little while, guys, and the performance has remained very consistent on the 5060. Next, I wanted to take a look at frame generation, multi-frame generation in this case, because we have an RTX 5000 series. So we're going to enable that. But interestingly enough, it actually demands a game restart. And why that's interesting is because, as you'll see later on the RTX 4090, if you enable DLSS frame generation, it doesn't actually require a restart, but MFG does. So that's a little bit strange. But ×2 multi-frame generation, we ended up gaining around 50 FPS or so, and I cleared quite a few groups of enemies, but unfortunately my software wasn't capturing the footage. So here we are, guys, but I've been playing with it on for, I don't know, like 10 minutes or so, and it's been pretty consistent. I haven't had any issues or any stuttering or anything like that. It's actually been pretty good. So ×2 multi-frame generation on the 5060 at 1440p with DLSS quality actually does pretty well here. No issues. And again, if it was 1080p, obviously it would be no issue, because if we're doing well at 1440p, 1080p would be perfectly fine. But I usually like to challenge my cards a little bit if I can, because it's more interesting that way. Let's take a look at ×4 multi-frame generation, and we'll go tackle the boss. And yeah, guys, it actually works. I mean, it's not a crazy increase, but we do actually hit around 250 FPS. And again, performance has been very consistent, which is great. Now this should be a bit challenging because there's a lot of effects, a lot of stuff happening here. And for the most part, it was actually pretty good, guys. But as we got on into the fight and it dragged on longer and longer, we did actually end up hitting some performance issues, which I would confidently say that it's VRAM related, obviously, because what else could it be, right? But I did feel it, and as you can see in the frame time graph, the performance does take a pretty big hit. And to make matters worse, the game ended up freezing and crashing. But hey, we are targeting a bit of a higher resolution, so what I wanted to do was drop the preset from very high to high and then try it again. And that's what we did, guys, and I ended up beating the boss, and we didn't have any performance issues at all. So it looks like it more than likely was a VRAM limitation, and again, with 8 gigs at 1440p, it's a bit difficult, so I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. But speaking about MFG, I do like it. I think it's very cool tech, and especially with the high refresh rate OLED displays, it's really cool tech to have. But you do need a pretty decent amount of frame rate to be able to use it, in my opinion. And with the RTX 5060's case, I haven't had the best experience, because in some games where I turn it on and it runs out of VRAM, the game becomes stuttery. But where it does work as intended, like for example in Doom, I tried it and it looked pretty good. Here, it actually works pretty good if you have a high refresh rate display. So yeah, I'd say 5060, 1080p should be no problem, but it can do 1440p, at least in this map. We'll now take a look at the RTX 4090, obviously at 4K, very high graphical preset, and we'll use an DLAA. DLSS 4, the image quality looks so good, guys, and just coming from the PlayStation 5 version, which can look quite flickery, and even though you do get 60 FPS, 60 FPS is fine, by the way, just getting double that is even more fluid. Now, of course, price difference is pretty big, but regardless, just explaining my experience, the image quality difference is very noticeable. Performance-wise, well, it's anywhere from 100 to 120. We're averaging pretty much in between that. Frame time looks pretty good, although there is a little bit of jitter that you can see on the frame time graph. Just playing the game, I wouldn't be able to tell if it wasn't on, because it feels extremely fluid and looks very nice. But I'll be honest, guys, with DLSS 4, I honestly find very little reason to even use DLAA, because I could just use DLSS Quality and the image looks just as good, but I can get a lot more frames. And that's how I look at it. Yes, DLAA is very nice, but it can be more demanding than just using TAA, and it is better, of course it is, but I'm not trying to use DLSS Quality, especially at 4K. It looks great, and as you can see, we were at from 115 FPS or so up into the 170s, so a pretty big jump here. And now maybe you'll understand why I showed a little bit of concern about the RTX 5060 when we enabled DLSS Quality at 1440p. We didn't see a huge gain, although we did see a gain, so maybe it was working as intended, and maybe it's just an RTX 5060 thing. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know that the 4090 does get a pretty nice jump to performance when you go from native to DLSS Quality, and actually so did the 9070 XT. The only problem with the 9070 XT was that it just looks like AMD GPUs are underperforming a bit here, at least from what I've heard from other people as well, and my own experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until the game releases, and hopefully AMD will have a driver update that we can take a look at, because the game was literally designed around AMD architecture. RDNA 2 to be exact. But anyway, I digress. DLSS Quality with the 4090 here, it's great, right? I mean, this would be plenty for most people unless you have a high refresh rate display. I have one. I have a 240Hz 4K OLED display, so that's what frame generation was made for, guys. And if you're already getting this level of performance, it's perfect to turn it on, and it makes the game a lot more fluid, and you're already getting great latency to begin with. We're going to enable DLSS frame generation right before the boss fight, guys. And enabling DLSS frame generation actually does not require a restart. But on the 5060, it was labeled as MFG times 2 times 2 times 4, and that required a restart. So that was pretty interesting. I don't think I've seen that before, but then again, I haven't had an RTX 5000 series card for that long, and half of the games I've turned MFG on it actually ran out of VRAM, funny enough. But I found that to be a little bit different and a little bit strange. But hey, enabling frame generation on top of DLSS quality at 4K on the 4090 takes us beyond my display's 240 hertz refresh rate. But man, I have to say the game looks absolutely fantastic, and it's so fluid. It's incredible. I mean, frame generation alone, if you're getting 60 FPS at least, in my opinion, 50 at the very minimum, I think it's okay, depending on the game, of course. I personally find it to be very helpful. It's a nice tool to have. And multi-frame generation, as I've experienced it a bit on the RTX 5060, it's actually very good technology. It works extremely well. And latency doesn't really change all that much from using regular frame generation. So if you have a very high refresh rate display, it's ideal for that. It's perfect. The reason why it gets such a bad name is because how it's been marketed, mostly by Nvidia, because they're pushing it as some sort of an equivalent to getting real frames, and that it's not it at all. 5070 is not equivalent to a 4090. I mean, no one believes that, right? But that gives MFG a bad name, or builds animosity with people, and that's unfortunate, really, because engineers have probably worked really hard to make these technologies for us to use. So yeah, that's quite unfortunate. But anyway, I digress, guys. Either way, Stellar Blade on the RTX 5060 and 4090 runs really well. I am concerned a bit about AMD GPUs, at least from my experience. The RX 9070 XT didn't perform nearly as where it should be versus my 4090. So I'm going to wait to test that one. We're going to wait for the final release of the game, which I'm definitely going to buy because I love this game. And we're going to take a look at it. Hopefully AMD will have a driver update by then. In either way, it wasn't stuttering or anything, but the 4090 was way too fast versus the 9070 XT. So yeah, I don't think something's not right there, in my opinion. And I also heard that FSR frame generation wasn't working either. But yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you think, and subscribe for more content. Please like the video if you liked it. I appreciate it. You guys have a good rest of the weekend. Bye-bye.